Greetings, everybody. I've been selling puts on TQQQ for almost 2 years now, and I'd like to share my experience and observations, especially after going through this recent 56% crash. The first thing I want to say is that I actually would have done better if I had just bought and held TQQQ instead of selling puts on it. But of course, that's easy for me to say now looking back, whereas when I first began, I thought it would be too risky to buy it directly. Now, these aren't my actual portfolio numbers, but the proportions are correct. So let's say that back in September 2023, when TQQQ was at $40 a share, I had $8,000 to invest. And I decided to use 1,400 of it to sell puts, and the rest of it I put into a T-bill ETF that pays monthly dividends. Live value is what my portfolio is actually worth in the moment, and options value is what it will be worth if or when the puts expire worthless above the strike price on expiration day. Anyway, after 9 months, by the end of June 2024, TQQQ was at $73 a share, and the portfolio was at $8,800 with an options value of $9,000. Notice how I now had more money in puts than in T-bills. This was because I saw that TQQQ kept going up, so I felt motivated to put more money into it because it was doing so well. But also because as TQQQ rises, you have to sell puts at higher strike prices if you want to keep receiving high percentage premiums. This new allocation presented a problem not long after because TQQQ crashed down to $53 in July, which caused the portfolio to go back down to $8,000 again. If we compare these two time frames, you'll notice that TQQQ was actually up from $40 to $53, but my portfolio wasn't up. That's because when I initially began selling puts, I didn't put a lot of money in them, and so I didn't make a lot during the rally. And by the time I decided to put more money in puts, TQQQ crashed and caused bigger losses. Anyway, I stuck with it and I rolled options as I felt necessary. And by the end of January 2025, when TQQQ got up to $82, my live value was $9,500 and my options value was at my goal of $10,000. But then came the 56% TQQQ crash, and by early-ish April, with TQQQ at $39, my portfolio dropped to $7,300, and I was left facing the reality that in a year and a half of selling puts, from late 2023 to early 2025, all I had done was lose $700. It puzzled me how after all this time I had no gains to show for it, especially since I thought time decay was a helping factor in helping put sellers make money. And I eventually realized that because I was taking money away from T-bills and putting it into more puts as I chased up strike prices, my portfolio and options value became more and more dependent on TQQQ's value. And so when it crashed, my portfolio crashed harder than it would have before the reallocation, and it erased all of the gains and then some. So what my new strategy is and has been for the past 3 months is to focus more on building up my T-bill holdings, which I've actually converted to high-yield bond and bank loan ETFs, so that my portfolio value depends less on TQQQ, and so that my gains hopefully won't all disappear ever again if or when there's another TQQQ crash. But truth be told, if I hadn't switched up my strategy near the April lows, which at the time I didn't know they were going to be the lows. And if I had just continued rolling the puts to further expiration dates, I probably would have reached the $10,000 live value goal by now, since TQQQ rebounded up to $88. But as I said, I'm now attempting to depend less on TQQQ's value for my gains. And so even though it will take longer, it seems I can still reach the $10,000 even if TQQQ drops to, say, $75 a share instead of being dependent on it being at $85 a share, for example. A drawback, of course, is if TQQQ goes up to $90 or $95, that's even more quicker gains I'd be missing out on for keeping my strike price so low and for limiting the amount of capital used in puts. But the trade-off, as I said, is to be able to reach the financial target at a lower required strike price, just in case there's another crash. In conclusion, I'll keep my options open, pun or no pun intended, and perhaps my strategy will change again. But for now, this is where I'm at. Good luck, everybody.